So here's your second thesis. Evangelical contextual theologies must acknowledge culture as a material theological good, a gift from God designed for the benefit of the church.
All right. So one way to think about this is like it doesn't really matter. Let's say there are things about us that don't matter to our theological reflection. So hair color, eye color, right? Those are not sort of material theological goods that help us. You don't want to focus on those things as a way to try to get better theology. But culture actually is. And I argue in that chapter that starts in Scripture. God decides to make culture a centerpiece of how he's going to reveal himself, how he's going to create a new people. And he reveals that it's not just one culture he's trying to create, he's trying to redeem every culture. And that's a huge starting point for us then as we think about how to engage with culture in theology.
Can you describe a bit just culture in general? Give us you do that in the book, but help us along, because even as I think about it, I'm like, I know what you mean, but I do know, having talked with other people, because I talk about culture all the time. In fact, I remember having a friend of mine who was a missionary to Germany, and we're in my kitchen talking about culture, and his 3-year-old daughter walked through the room and she just said, culture, culture, culture. That's all I ever hear is culture. And I laughed because, you hear Christ in culture. We want to talk about ministering to cultures, but yet there is that idea of high culture or culture thinking, people thinking of art in terms like that. But that's not what we mean here. Let's talk about the definition and how we're trying to use this term culture.
Yeah, no, that's great. And one thing to just highlight at the very start there that your comment helps set up is culture can mean a lot of different things. Sometimes it does mean the results of culture. Like we used to talk about, like, opera is culture or literature is culture, right? It's really shifted in meaning over the last 150 years because of the way we understand culture now. The definition I like the best is from a theologian named Bill Dearness, and he describes culture as that changing set of communal practices and assumptions that serve as a repertoire of people's actions and by which they express their identity. So in other words, everyone is walking around. It's not static. It's not like you're this one thing, right? It's actually that you have a bunch of different things that are swirling around, and you draw from those things to express yourself, to go about your life. And that helps explain also why people usually, especially today, are actually operating in multiple cultures, especially if you live in a city or something like that. You have different parts of yourself that they call it code switching, like you're going to use that part here and that part here. Maybe you're a person who grew up in a rural area, but you live in a city and you actually now operate, you're a little bit bicultural, right? So that maybe helps give you an idea of maybe a more complex and more subtle definition of culture. And I'll just point out, this is not actually the same concept of culture that we're familiar with when we talk about Christ and culture, the Niebuhr, really very influential model. That is actually more about our interaction with the organs of culture, like government, policy making, schools, things like that. That was what he was interested in the 50s, because that was the issue at the time. Today, culture, the Christ and culture debate actually needs to be reframed. It's a different thing. Yeah.